Hey guys, so today I'm going to show you the basics of taking a vinyl stencil and applying it to a piece of wood to make yourself a sign. And the things you are going to need are your vinyl stencil. I don't know if you can see that, the letters cut out there. Your piece of contact paper that's going to help us transfer it to the wood. A round foam brush if you were able to find them. If not, you can use a square foam brush or just a regular paintbrush could even work too. The technique's a little bit different for that, but I'll get into that later. Tweezers are very helpful. A straight pin to help you pull the stencil letters out of the vinyl, and a flat surface for pushing the vinyl onto the board. As you're going to get your supplies, you'll need some regular acrylic craft paint, and these can be found pretty much anywhere these days: Walmart, Target, Hobby Lobby, Joann's, places like that. And this is a brand I like called Anita's. It's one of the better ones that paints on well and coats well. And there's another brand called Folk Art that I really like too that are available at these places. So to get started, your very first step is going to be to weed all of these letters out of your stencil. And my favorite way of doing this is to use the straight pin and kind of poke at the edge until it starts to lift. And then you can just start to pull out the letters on your stencil. And make sure, I don't know if you saw that, these peeled up a little bit as I was pulling that out, so just kind of push them back down. And then you're going to want to go ahead and get into every letter. Perfect example. So see, this is a P that I'm trying to pull out here, and the middle of the P does not want to come out. So you can just go ahead and use your needle and kind of push that down as you're pulling back on it until that little part pops out. You can kind of hold it from underneath to keep it in place there. You want to make sure that you keep all of those little pieces there for all of your letters and numbers and things like that, so that they show up on the stencil when you paint. If you're having a hard time with just the needle, or there's some tricky parts, I sometimes also like to use tweezers, and that can kind of help you grab at things. It's sometimes a little bit easier than poking underneath the vinyl. So you just want to go ahead and pull all of these off. Get my needle back here. It's a tricky little three. It doesn't want to stay down. Okay, so once you have successfully pulled all of the pieces of unwanted vinyl out of your stencil, then we're going to go ahead and take this contact paper and peel it off of there. This is oftentimes the hardest part. So get that off of there. And then go ahead and lay your contact paper down on top of the stencil. I like to work either top to bottom or left to right and just kind of press that on. If you get some little bubbles or a little crease in this step, that is not a huge deal, because the contact paper is really just meant to help you transfer the stencil to the wood. So once you've laid your contact paper down, we're going to go ahead and use a flat surface. I'm using a gift card here. The edge of your phone sometimes works well, or the back of a spoon, but you just want to make sure that you rub it decently hard to get the whole stencil to stick to the contact paper. Just give it a good rub, and then when you're done with that, we're going to flip the stencil over and peel this white backing from the stencil. So for this part, I like to work backwards, or upside down I should say, and kind of pull the paper back almost flat to the surface. That'll make sure all of these little bits and pieces are kind of getting stuck where they need to, as opposed to pulling it off at an angle. And if when you are pulling it off, some of these smaller parts may stick to the white backing, if that would happen, you would just kind of fold it back over. I like to rub with the back of my fingernail, and generally it'll stick and you can keep moving along. It's pretty forgiving, so take your time and you'll get there. So once you've peeled the backing off, we're gonna go ahead and place it on our wood where we would like it and just kind of smooth it out. And repeat the same process you did to get it to stick to the paper to release it to the wood. This will help the stencil stick to the wood. And then once you've given it a decent rub, you can go ahead and pull that contact paper off. Kind of same fashion, I just back it off, kind of fold it over itself, and just peel that right off. Give it a good little rub just to make sure all of those pieces are there. And then you're ready to start painting. So as I mentioned, I like to use this type of a round dabbing brush. I find that they're the easiest to kind of fill things in without getting paint underneath the lines of the stencils. You can find these at Hobby Lobby or Joann's or Amazon. If you don't want to order a whole pack of them, a regular square foam brush will do, or even just a regular paintbrush, and I'll show you a little bit of a technique with that. But for the painting process, the trick is that you don't want to put too much paint on your brush and get too much paint on the wood at one time, otherwise the paint's going to try to seep underneath that stencil. So you just want to grab a tiny bit of paint, and I like to dab mine off a little bit. So you can see my brush here is not even quite all the way coated. And then we're just going to start dabbing at this to fill in our stencil. So 2 or 3 thin coats of paint are better than one thick one for sure, to kind of get whatever look you're going for. And when you run out of paint, just dab on a little more, dab it off, and keep on going until the stencil is all the way filled in. So if you don't have these foam brushes, you can also use just a regular paintbrush, and it's going to be kind of a similar process. Just pick up a tiny bit of paint, and the key here would be to push from the outside as opposed to going this way over the edge of the stencil. That way you're not pushing the paint directly into the edge of the stencil. So you can see here where I've used a brush compared to where I've used a foam, the foam dabber. The foam dabber will actually put on the paint a little bit more thicker. So if you are using a paintbrush, you're going to need, you know, probably 2 or 3 decent coats of this. And you can do them while they're still wet. Give them a couple of minutes to just kind of set up a little bit. And finish up your stencil here. So we are going to pretend like I have done a couple of beautiful coats, and this is exactly like I want it to be. I'm just going to brush over these in case I decide to use this for something else so that it all kind of looks the same. All right, so once you are done painting, you're going to let your stencil and your paint dry just a little bit for just a few minutes so that it's not super runny or anything. Once you can see the paint sort of drying here on the vinyl, that's a good time to start pulling it off because the paint will still be a little bit tacky on the board, but it'll release a little bit easier. So when you're all painted and you're ready to take your stencil off, you just want to start here at the corner and just kind of pull. And it's pretty easy to work with. And if you get to a point like this, well, I don't know if you saw that, that just ripped there, and that's okay, because we'll go back in and pull that off. If you get to a point where your hand is getting too full of stencil, this actually will tend to rip fairly easily, so you can just kind of rip chunks off or use a pair of scissors to cut it off to make it easier for you to work with. So you can see here what I was talking about with the paintbrush, how it started to bleed a little bit there compared to where I was just kind of dabbing it. But this is also a different type of wood. This is just a regular 2x4 that I was using as a piece of scrap wood. So your piece of wood is nice and smooth and shouldn't have a whole lot of bleeding. So once you get the stencil off, you're gonna go back in here. You can use your pin to kind of pick up. I like to use actually both for this process, to kind of lift with the pin and then pull with the tweezers once you've got that started there. And just work to get all of these little tiny pieces off. Last one. And now you have your very own wood painted sign. Good luck, guys. I hope your painting turns out well.